Good afternoon and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today, we're focusing on the buyer's experience to sell more. We're joined by Christopher Windisch, founder of CatchMoby. Christopher's experience includes developing successful sales teams for some of the largest tech companies in the world, and personally selling over $200 million in contracts. Today, he will share with us a revolutionary sales approach centered around the buyer's experience that can transform your sales strategy and drive consistent success. Christopher, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Calling in from the West Coast, so good morning.
Good morning. Christopher, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
So I was born in a small town called Plainview, which was funny because they always say I was born in Plainview. So that was in New York, and started my illustrious career when I came out of college. And I started as a consultant. And as a technology consultant, I said, hey, every year, all I do is I read the specs manual. And I learn out the new feature and functions that are coming out. And they said, you know what? The salespeople are having a lot more fun. They're going out to lunch. They're talking to people. They're having these great, I'm going to become a salesperson. So I did that. I traveled to Canada. Rogers was my first customer. After that, I went to Europe. I came to the US. And through that journey, I worked with a lot of great large companies. So Oracle, SAP, AT&T. So a lot of these iconic companies. I got to see exactly how they sell and how they teach you how to sell. And everyone was completely different. Fast forward, I worked with a lot of smaller companies and startups with CEOs that were hiring now salespeople today that didn't have traditional training, right? They weren't part of these mentorship programs. That's kind of gone away today. You're expected, I always liken sales to kind of chefs, right? You got to come with your bags of knives and you just got to start cooking. That's it. There's no training, no orientation, bring your own tools and start selling. And so witnessing that, I said, well, wait a minute. You look at the statistics, and all these numbers are coming down, right? People are selling less. Quotas aren't being met. Sales cycles are longer. Customers aren't buying, all this stuff. So I said, you know, the way I started selling in my career, I kind of almost lived a dual life. I went one road to satisfy what I call my master. So I did all my activity and my forecasting, and I filled out CRM like a good salesperson. But then I had my separate selling kind of ideology that I used to actually close deals. And so I thought, hey, if I could kind of bring that to life and help other sellers who don't want to go through 30 years like me trying to learn this and make mistakes and get burned, it's just going to make it more efficient for them. And, you know, like we were talking about, I kind of call it the matrix, because it really is just seeing sales in a completely different light and having that kind of aha moment. So it's been that long career. I've kind of been there, done that. And I went through kind of the madman days when, you know, sales was glorious. And, you know, today it kind of seems like a grind. So I'm just out there trying to help people be successful.
Isn't it ironic, though, that you had your two, a foot in each camp, one doing the stuff that they told you to do and the other doing the stuff that worked, and the two were completely divorced from each other? And I just find that absolutely staggering. And you know, as we were chatting beforehand, my experience of working in a large organization was lip service is being paid to, you know, we want to have a great relationship with the customer. And you want to have a great sales relationship with the customer. Right. And the idea of actually putting the customer at the center of what you're doing is completely alien to most of these organizations, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely alien. And you have, you know, where we had product sales, and then we had solution sales, and then we had the consultant sales and selling the invisible. And we keep marching down and giving lip service to that. And I think, you know, AT&T, an old organization, they brought in solution selling when I was there, like, you know, 15 years after everybody else had thought about selling solutions. But the reality is, we think of an activity-based sales system. We think about, as a salesperson, what meetings do I want to have and what do I want to accomplish? We don't think about the buyer's journey. We definitely don't think about buyer psychology, buyer mindset, you know, how they want to buy, how they choose to buy. We don't think about that at all. It's kind of like you're building a house, and on Monday I say, you have a hammer. Get done whatever you can get done with the hammer, because on Tuesday you have a wrench. And whatever you can get done with the wrench, and it's like, no, let's look at the big picture, and I'll call for the tools later, right?
So okay, if I'm watching this and I'm running a sales team and I'm going, it's not working, because every sales team we talk to is like, we've got no pipeline, we've got great salespeople, but no one wants to talk to them. Everything's going wrong. What's the first thing that they can look at and go, right, I'll change that will get them a quick win in some, I don't mean necessarily a quick piece of business, but they'll see, I'm going to flick this switch. Oh, wow, that's made a difference.
Yeah. So if you look at the way we kind of look at selling, we look at this whole market with AI is flooding the market with lots of noise, right? It's very tough to get noticed. We look at COVID, where people have been remote and isolated, and so they're craving this human contact. We look at competition has kind of been at an all-time high, because I think of AI has reduced that barrier to entry. So all of that is saying that your customers are craving connection and relationship. And when I talk to most salespeople, they say, I can build relationships. I've had relationships for 30 years. But what they're talking about is rapport, right? I go out for a beer, I get to know somebody. There's an actual buying relationship that we've identified and criteria, which is based on value, credibility, and trust. And so the thing you can do today is forget about demos, presentations, calls, meetings. Just get down and say, what does my customer need to see for value, for credibility, and for trust? Start listing those and start ticking those off. It could be, value in my company. It could be credibility in my solution. It could be, following up on things I do to build trust. But there are very specific criteria we do to track the relationship. And again, forget about demos, forget about all these things. They're only useful if they're moving the ball forward on these value, credibility, and trust. And so if you can track those criteria, that's why people buy. And that was my kind of, second selling. I would have that kind of VCT tracker and I'd be ticking off the box. Joe doesn't see credibility in my product development team. He thinks they don't know what they're doing. They're not developing for industry standards. I've got to address that. That's a red flag. So I would track all these while I'm doing my activity-based forecasting over here. And then lo and behold, everyone's like, that's a 9-month cycle. I would close it in 6. Because if you build that relationship and you show the customer you're serving them and you're meeting their actual needs, that's how you're going to close a deal.
Seems simple.
It seems simple, but it's funny. Even Rob had the same reaction. Everyone's like, I've never thought to do that, but yet I'm always kind of doing it in the background.
Yeah.
And that's what most salespeople do. They have a notepad or now an iPhone or whatever, and they're writing, I don't think Joe trusts us, or I don't think, Joe sees value in our company, or I don't think they respect our CEO. It's kind of these random notes. If you actually put those into a tracker and you're tracking those, that's what wins the deal. I had a Fortune 500 that was an RFP, very, very old company, very, very standard. And again, I went through the RFP process and did the meetings. But outside of that, I was sending them information. I was showing more value. I was building that buying relationship, right? Here's credibility. Here's credibility. Did you know that my CEO was just at an industry standards board? He heads that, right? If you buy from us, you're going to be part of the industry standard and getting the best standards, blah, blah. Did you know my product development team has this kind of roadmap? Did you know? I was just constantly showing value and credibility, and they kind of forgot the RFP cycle for a while and just said, hey, we have this great feeling. There's so much value coming from this vendor that forget about all the tick boxes in the RFP and the feature functions. We want to go with this vendor. And procurement literally told me, you're the Cadillac. You're 20% more than every other solution, but the users want you. And that's what you do. You shorten the sales cycle. You get higher margins, all because of that relationship. And the relationship carries over. When they go to support, now they have a great relationship that makes customer success easier. When it comes back for renewals and upsells, cross-sells, they have that better relationship. When it comes to get a customer reference, you have a better relationship. It's just something that everyone should be seeding from the beginning, because it follows through the entire customer journey.
That's
we have
straightforward.
an interesting.
No, I was just going to say, so why do so few people do it? That's the point, isn't it? It's so obvious. You've laid it out in some ways that this is blindingly obvious. So why do you have a job? Why doesn't everyone just do this?
So we're finding a trend, right? We want sales to be automated, automatic. And so especially with sellers today, we give them a roadmap. You need to have a discovery call. And we're using methodologies from the 1960s. Anyone hear of budget, authority, need, and timeline? That was IBM in the 1960s. We're literally using methodologies from the 1960s.
Yeah.
Get on a discovery call and make sure you get these 5 pieces of information. And then now we have setters and closers, right? Not even salespeople, setters and closers. Make sure you set up a meeting. Make sure you do a demo and close them, right? We've gotten even worse today. We've gotten so far away from what the buyer requirements. We've locked them into you're going to have 2 calls with us. We're going to set you up for a meeting and we're going to close you with a demo. And so I think now more than ever, even for smaller companies, it's time to do something completely innovative, because as sales numbers go down, tips and tricks are only going to give you incremental gains. Unless you completely turn around the way you sell, you're never going to take market share away from competitors. You're never going to have the scalable growth you want to go public or get investment. And so, again, it's something so simple, but I think people are scared to step away from what has been done for so many years, what's been so documented, and just what is an easy process for them to follow.
We have an interesting comment from the audience. Bob Britton says, paradoxically, buyers prefer not to have reps in the mix. E-com is exploding right now. Customer experience in e-com is tricky. So, Christopher, I wanted to get your take on that. We've heard tale that more and more buyers prefer a seller-free experience. Yeah. Is that because sellers aren't doing it right? What are the things that would, or is it that the technology is just advancing that sellers aren't necessary?
I think that's right. And I got to say, hey, I don't want to talk to salespeople either, the way they sell today. So that doesn't surprise me. And it's funny, you see all these reports of, 80% of the sales cycle is over. That's why Challenger came out and salespeople are educated. I have to tell you, when I worked at a lot of companies, there were salespeople that worked for the company for 6 months or a year, didn't even understand the product. So the fact that customers have time to go educate themselves and understand these complicated issues when I live and breathe them every day, the customers are not more educated. I think it's just the buying experience has gotten so horrible. You look at, surveys that were done, 60 to 70% of customers say buyers aren't prepared for the meeting. And I think it's because you show no value, right? And if you show no value, when I talk about value, credibility, and trust, it's funny because I talk about three things. You, the salesperson, your company, and your product. And a lot of people give me pushback. Why do I have to show value in me as a salesperson? I'm just selling a product. No. Because the most important thing is to get another call. I don't really care about your product and company. I care about you. If you're a jerk and I don't want to talk to you and you have no value, I don't want to talk to you as a salesperson. You'll never be able to sell me. And so sellers have to think about that. I need to show value in myself. Hey, I've worked with customers. I know customers that are in here. I have a lot of people you can talk to that are wrestling with your same issues. I know today's a confusing industry with 75 competitors wherever you look. No way a customer wants to Google 75 competitors and go on G2 and look at all of this. So maybe for the very low end, when you're looking at $5 or $10 software, but as soon as you start going up that scale, I would think customers would crave a true seller who's more of the consultant, who says, look, and Gartner, who's not very good at marketing, but they understand, they call it sense making. They're like, if you can just help a customer make sense of this ridiculous market, you're going to have a customer for life. And so I think if you pivot the way you have that relationship and say, hey, customer, I'm here just to help you understand this minefield that is SaaS software, technology, et cetera, then a customer is going to want to talk to you.
So we have the person, the company, and the product. We have value, credibility, and trust. Now I'm envisioning a 3x3 matrix. Add the dimension of time, and now I see the matrix.
That's the matrix, and it's interesting because a lot of people forget about me and my company. They're just, here's the solution. Well, there's a lot of times, and it's funny, I was looking at software the other day, literally, if I don't believe the company is going in the right direction, if I don't think they serve my industry, if I don't think they're rolling out features fast enough, I'm not going to buy even a $30 software. And so the problem is you get to the end and salespeople have all these objections. Well, if you hit this value, credibility, and trust up front in me, my company, and my solution, those objections go away, right? And I can even precede that. I know what the objections are going to be. So I can precede that and get rid of the objections. But most salespeople just think, again, setters and closers, here's my product. If they see a demo, they're going to buy. And it's funny, after all the solution talk and selling the invisible, I think we've regressed and we've gone more product selling today than ever before.
Well, I think it's because there is this kind of homogeny, isn't there, of both businesses and of sellers in the marketplace. So, the individuals, you go out onto LinkedIn and everyone looks the same.
Yeah.
You look at the companies, you said everywhere you look, there's 75 different companies. Yeah, there is. I want a CRM system. What do you need it to do? I need it to do these 3 things. Well, there's 1,000 that do that. So why am I going to pick yours? And people default, well, because yours has got a blue button and his has got a red button, and I prefer blue, so I'll go with you. And it's like, that's great if the cards fall in your favor, but people are making big decisions for completely the wrong reasons. I don't like check shirts, therefore I'm not going to buy from you.
Right.
Well, in the absence of any other measurement criteria, I might as well use that. It's as valid as anything else. So this idea that, you actually build some rapport, you demonstrate your credibility, you demonstrate the business's credibility,
Right.
then you demonstrate the product's credibility, and then you've ticked off all of those boxes, and the person's then, well, you don't actually have to sell it to you. They buy it because you've removed every obstacle to them wanting your solution.
Yeah, and we all know that solutions don't sell, right? You don't look at a software online and say, oh my God, I've been born to have the solution. I want it, right? I mean, all these solutions look the same. I tell the same joke. I have a salesperson who sold a big deal. I think it was Becton Dickinson or one of the healthcare companies. And he went to the kickoff meeting and they said, hey, great job. I'm so happy we chose X. And X was the competitor. They didn't even know who they chose. And my colleague was like, sorry, first of all, you chose Y. And they're like, everything looked the same. There was no difference. The only difference was literally the team. It was literally how they sold, how they engaged with them. And so even today with software, I look at project management software, you look at all the solutions out there, nobody buys because of your solution. Your solution becomes a check mark. Does it do 80 to 90% of what I want to do? Is it priced in line with everybody else? Great. Where do I have the best experience, right? Who's going to get back to me when I need help? And that's why I say building this relationship, if you only have 3 calls with your customer or 2 calls, you can build that relationship in just 2 calls with the customer. And you can make such an impression that they may not remember the software, but they're going to remember who they talked to. And that's why they're going to buy and join a company.
But we have these metrics. I have call numbers that I need to meet. I have a number of emails that I need to send out. How does this methodology align with management, measurement, and metrics?
Yeah, so I especially as when I came from Oracle, it was all about numbers, right? More activity equals more sales. That's assuming you're doing the right thing. But it's funny, everything is more automated now. We can make tons more calls. We have robo-dialers, but yet less people are making their number. So obviously activity doesn't hit more sales. And when I was a manager and I had a strategic account rep, they would come in with these large accounts, and every week, what changed? Nothing changed. Your forecast didn't change, nothing changed. How can you know if a deal is moving forward, right? And as a salesperson, I think, hey, I had another call with Joe. I think the deal's getting closer because I had another call. Activity doesn't mean that the buyer is ready to buy. I had another demo. That's great. That's meaningless. I could have 50 demos or no demos. What you have to do, and the metric you can track, is the relationship, right? And it's funny because I've been 6 months with a customer. At the very end, I said, I kind of had this gut feeling that Joe is starting to trust us. So 6 months of activity wasn't as strong as my gut feeling in one meeting. And so we have a VCT tracker that, of course, talks about engagement. It talks about how many people have you identified that are influencers, like traditional mapping. It talks about where they are on that VCT, which is kind of like, are they a coach? Are they detractor? Are they supporter? But it goes deeper, right? Do they value us? Do they trust us, right? And do they see credibility? And that's the solution. So when you start to map the people to this VCT tracker, now you have a game plan, and it tells you exactly what your next meeting should be. You should have these 3 people, and you should have these 4 topics. So it almost builds you a roadmap of what your next meeting, and then I can go to my sales manager and not just say, I kind of feel like they're coming along. I could say, no, look, I've turned Joe. He now thinks, he respects our product development team, right? So I have hard and fast metrics I can track that actually show the buyers moving towards a buyer decision.
How is a salesperson to fill that out, though? For example, they have trust in me. Well, hell yes, I want to say yes every time. That sounds like it's not necessarily the best approach, but why would I, as the salesperson, want to admit to anything less than that?
Well, again, we front load this with, you have to have emotional intelligence. If you can't read the customer and customer cues, there's no point in doing this, because you'll never understand it. And when I say value, I bring 100% value. The customer brings no value. I bring 100% of my value to the customer. Credibility to me is 50-50. I may tell them how good I am, right? but the customer may also have heard of me or researched me. So it's kind of 50-50. Trust is 100% customer, right? And value, remember, is what I'm going to do. Credibility is can I do it? And trust is will I do it? So those are the three questions you're trying to answer through the entire sales cycle. And as a salesperson, I'm sorry, you have to take a real look and say, we have questions we put together for trust. Does the customer share anything confidential with you? Right? And that Fortune 500 customer, they sat me down after a meeting. They said, Christopher, come here, sit down. This is my planning horizon for the next 2 years. Can you look through it and just tell me anything you can help with? If it's not a solution, maybe you know somebody. He opened up the keys of the kingdom. To me, that is a massive indicator of trust. So we have 10 or 12 questions of trust that you can actually gauge your customer's trust level. At that point, I knew there were no more meetings, there were no more demos. He was going to buy. That's it. So you have to, I think, be honest with yourself and understand, hey, I'm not the greatest person at showing value. And it's so great when you get feedback, right? When you lose a deal, you can go back to the customer and literally give them this. Hey, I typically look at these categories, value, credibility, and trust. Where do you think we dropped the ball? And they can say, hey, there's a lot of value, great ROI, but I don't think your company's going to be there in the long haul, right? I don't think they're going to be there to support me. There's a credibility issue. And you can literally track that and feed back into your sales process and get stronger and stronger and stronger.
It's brilliant. The simplicity of it and the fact that it's keying into these fundamental issues and wants from people. I just love everything you're saying, Christopher. It's outstanding.
Yeah. It's going to blow your mind. I'll take another Oracle. In Oracle, we used to have these account plans, right? And they used to make us have the customer sign them. And we had to turn them in like homework to our managers. Like, look, the customer signed my homework. They agreed to my action plan. But what was the action plan? It was the seller's journey. It was, these are the meetings you're going to have. This is when you'll talk to product. This is when you'll do the demo. Imagine if you go to a customer with a VCT plan and say, look, I have to show you. It's my job to show you value, credibility, and then to build trust with you. So I'm showing you this plan. This is what I'm looking to accomplish. The customer's mind is blown because, wait a minute, this isn't product and feature. This is completely esoteric and out there. You're going to try and build value, credibility, and trust. All right, you want to build value with me? Give me a customer reference that has, dominated China in my industry, or, help me get into this industry board or this conference, and then you really start having that relationship. And then the product is really secondary. It's going to blow the customer away.
A lot of deals are lost to no decision.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Do you see this as helping alleviate that for salespeople as well?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at not only the number of won deals, but this obviously shrinks the sales cycle. Right? Because we have people that are still doing demos that don't need to do demos. They're still having meetings with people they never need to meet with. So this really makes the sales cycle efficiency because you're getting at the heart of it. The no decision, right, we always say is our toughest competitor because you can't point to that competitor. There's no closure. There's no, why didn't you choose me? There's no compelling event. And as you're building out this relationship, this really helps shine a light on kind of what Sandler said 60 years ago, is to always be qualifying the customer. When you've got this level of relationship and you're showing this level of value and you're showing credibility and you're having these open conversations with the customer, you're constantly qualifying them, right? In sales, there's always the honeymoon stage. Some people, I'm sorry, I told my wife this and she just laughed at me. I said, some people are just lonely. I'm sorry, but they want people to talk to. And you're a salesperson, you're giving me knowledge, you're teaching me about the industry, you're showing me cool products. And then what happens? You ask for the purchase, and you start talking about contracts, and they're like, whoa. Honeymoon is over. No longer is it a friendship and you're teaching me and fun. Now it's getting real. Well, with VCT, they know that relationship is there. They know it's going to get real. And they don't want to invest in that relationship and open themselves up. And so you see signs very early on if they're committed or not to the process.
Wow.
I knew you'd like this conversation, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely outstanding because my experience of dealing with organizations, I see this time and time again. This is like a missing piece of the holistic view of how you sell things. And certainly from our perspective, we are helping organizations to have more conversations with their ideal accounts. Currently they're in a situation where they're all great at closing, they're all great at selling, but they haven't got anybody to sell to. And it's like, this is the bit that fits in the middle, isn't it? When you started to get conversations going within an organization through what it is that we do, this helps them to map and point those conversations in a direction towards a sale. And then if it's not going to go in that direction, they can turn around and walk away. Or if it is, they can identify which bits they need to refine and hone and tweak in order to get to that point quickly. And then they can deploy their sales skills. And I just love that this is, like everything good, it's so simplistic and obvious, isn't it?
It's simplistic and obvious. It's just, again, it's the matrix, right? It's that third level of playing a mental game and flipping sales upside down. It's no longer activity based. I don't worry about, I have to have this call, this demo, this conversation. It's really about just tracking relationship and letting go of all of those activities. And then as a salesperson, we say it's an unfair advantage. You literally get an unfair advantage of building that relationship. And like you said, the sweet spot is the middle, right? Because we're all talking about lead gen and getting people into the funnel. And salespeople love having those closing and negotiating and that contract signed. But it's the middle where the customer kind of languishes. And when I say, you ghost a lot of people, right? As a customer, you're going to ghost the salespeople.
But this deal has only been in that qualification stage for 483 days.
Right.
It's going to move forward. It's going to close next week.
Right. And I had 5 meetings with them and 3 demos. Why aren't they ready to buy? Right? They've seen the product 3 times. What more do they want? And it's that kind of thinking that is why people languish and they don't go, because that long sales cycle, that's what's painful for the customer. It's painful because you're not providing value. They're not trusting you. And you literally have to lift yourself above that sales cycle. And now you're someone who's giving me industry insights. And that's what I do in my Fortune 500. Say, hey, here's the customer you can talk to, completely unrelated. But I know that you're trying to tackle this new business. And they've tackled that new business. Maybe it's worth a conversation. Just throwing it out there. Hey, I saw a new article, maybe relevant, maybe not. Hey, we're going to be at a conference. Hey, it's showing all of this value and credibility. And then when you come through, they can trust you. And they're like, wait, none of this has to do with the sales cycle. But secretly, the psychology and this psychology of reciprocity, right, that most people don't know about. When you tend to give, that's why, I hate to credit the Hare Krishnas with this, but that's kind of where it was developed, right? When you give someone something, psychologically, they're indebted to you. They want to give something back.
Yeah.
And so when a customer is not calling you back, stop hounding them and saying, value, I'm going to give you 5x ROI. Just start floating them value. Hey, I read this article. Hey, you made me think of another customer that did XYZ to fix your problem. When you start giving them value, psychologically, they are compelled to return that favor and get back to you. And so when you understand these psychology concepts with building a relationship, it's, like I said, it's an unfair advantage, and you're going to have the strongest customer relationship you've ever had.
Wow. Christopher, this has been fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant.
How can people learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
So they can hit me up on LinkedIn, or they can always go to CatchMoby.com and contact me directly.
Excellent. This has been another edition of Sales TV Live. On behalf of the panelists and team here at Sales TV Live, to our guest, Christopher, to everyone in the audience, thank you for being an active part of today's conversation. And we'll